Hey everyone, welcome to another fantastic episode of Sales 101, the B2B sales classroom. We're your hosts, Donald C. Kelly and
Mr. Dr. BJ Allen.
I like the Mr. now. You see, you take Mr. Dr. BJ Allen.
I'm
And
just trying to elevate my status here, Donald.
you should. And I wish you can elevate my status. I have been lobbying for my hat for BYU Sales Society and have not received it as of yet. But you see how he brought his and flaunted today. Ladies and gentlemen, if you think I should get a hat and BJ should give one to me, please send him a message on LinkedIn and let him know.
We give them to a select few. Donald, he's on the waiting list.
Oh, some people. I'm going to skip you in purchasing department and go straight to the department. Your students who like me. Which brings into topic what we're talking about today. I think for many of us, we have done that, and I've shared those sad experience of skipping around purchasing and what that could be like. So today, our guest is really phenomenal. His name is Mr. Go ahead, BJ. You think you have a good French pronunciation?
Bert Paesbrugghe, I think is how you pronounce it.
Well, Bert is fantastic, and it was fun. We got a chance to connect with him, and he has a book, and I think we put it in the show notes, so you guys should all check it out. It's The Buyer's Balance, and he runs a startup as well called Evaluation Hub. And Bert also, he's a professor in Paris. Is it Paris, BJ? And we just got a chance to connect with them. And one of the conversations that came up was like, what is sales like in the EU versus the US? And they started a sales program. They have a master's in sales. Like, BJ, I didn't know that until you mentioned that there's not a lot of master's program to that level. But I was really impressed with that insight. And I thought, make a great conversation today. But it's fun. So what are you looking forward to the most from this episode, BJ?
Two things. One, just to hear about his experience in sales and how quickly it's developed in the EU. And secondly, his book's phenomenal, and being able to talk about understanding sales from the buyer's perspective, because we talk so much about in education from the student's perspective, what it's going to look like to sell, what you say, how you say it, the process you go through. But hearing it from the buyer's perspective, it was actually really, really, really interesting.
So it's a fun episode. We're excited for it. So let's go ahead and dive into this conversation and connect with Bert. Bert, welcome to the show.
Hello, Donald. Thank you so much for having me.
BJ and I are over here, like, just, deliberating about, what's this episode going to be like? And then, what we said was it's going to be magic because, no, seriously, but here's why. This is our first time we're doing an episode with educator from the EU. And I think in our prep call, we were all really excited because there's so much that comes with the evolution of sales, and really looking forward for your perspective on this. We bragged about you a little bit in the teaser, but why don't you take a second and tell us a little bit about what you do right now and the roles and so forth?
Well, I would love to take this moment also to lower the expectations a little bit, because that's really important, definitely in B2B sales. But thank you so much. I feel really flattered. So a bit of background about myself. So I have different hats. So I'm an associate professor of sales and purchasing at the business school in Paris, which is called the ESSEC School of Management. I'm also a founder of a startup, a software that manages customer experience and supplier relationship management. It's called Evaluations Hub. And then I also recently published a book, which is actually on the same topic again, the buyer-seller relationship. And the book is called The Buyer's Balance, What Your Customers Want to Share with You.
Awesome. Well, we're going to touch base on that book and that piece at the second part of our conversation today. But BJ, let's dive in. Let's talk about this. The challenge that we see is, and in our prep conversation, was that BJ did this or assisted with developing a sales program at Provo. They had something, but BJ came and helped formalize it a little bit deeper. You did it in the EU. We knew we were going to do it no matter what. BJ's in a heavily sales market in Provo, Salt Lake, Silicon Valley, Silicon Slopes area. In your world, there was no sales program at the university. And you have these students who view sales in a not so favorable way in a lot of people. And I have always joked with my clients who are in Poland and so forth, like it is hard. I don't know if I would be able to be successful selling in Germany and in the Polish market. Give me the US all day long. But there is a need because there's a lot of company who need that. So what we want to kind of get at is why did you feel it was so imperative that there was a sales curriculum established at your university, and also that we start doing this more heavily in Europe?
So at my university, it was really pushed by companies. So companies really require good salespeople with a certain level of skills, and that is clearly missing. Although it's changing rapidly now in a lot of business schools and universities, but before it was not even a course in many business schools. So now that is changing really because of the requirement of companies, and definitely the career services. They realize that many students, they end up in sales as a first job or even later on as well, but it comes under a different label.
So talk a little bit about so the companies are coming in, they're saying, hey, we need sales. So now administration's getting they're getting the attention, or companies are getting the attention of administrators, and they're saying, okay, let's do this. How do you change the perception inside the business school among faculty and among students that, hey, sales is a legitimate career? It's a rigorous curriculum. So I'm interested from both the student side. How'd you gain more interest from students, and how'd you get kind of buy-in from faculty?
So I think I was lucky enough to join ESSEC. So they have been recruiting many sales professors over the last few years. I think in my department we're about 12 out of 40. So the department is marketing and sales, and that's quite a lot of sales professors. So they've seen the trends. They really, I don't know how to say it, but like they really reacted to the market demand, which is actually a good sales approach. And that has been working out for them. Also for the internships, and the students seem to be doing very well afterwards as well. So it's a kind of little by little step approach that seemed to work over the last few years, and now they really double down on it.
Can you talk to us a little bit about, do you see any, because most of our listeners are going to be from the United States. Can you talk a little about kind of what you see? Are there any differences between the way that U.S. universities approach sales education and the way that, Europe, some of those business schools approach sales education in terms of the curriculum, or the way that they help students find jobs, sales competitions? Like, just talk a little bit about what it's like in Europe compared to the U.S. to teach sales.
And it's just from my perception, of course, what I have seen.
That's all that matters. This
Yes.
Exactly. Perception is
you're,
also what
you're the
counts.
leading sales expert in Europe. Come on.
Well,
Just kidding.
that's not true, but so I think in the US they dare to really sell the sales program. They're proud of it. They have really like a lot of proud about it. It really shines. And what we still have in Europe, I can't generalize, but and it's changing in a positive way, is that we kind of position it as we also offer a sales class, or we also can do this, but we never put it as like we do sales. Now we also have kind of masters dedicated to selling.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, which is quite recent. We attach it to a negotiation angle sometimes, because that attracts more students as well. So it's kind of learning that is going on, but it's working out well. And there's also few business schools that are focusing on this. So it really gives us an advantage to really position sales as a main career and not kind of a nice to have, of course, in a bigger curriculum.
How cool that you have a master's in sales. I would say that
I know.
there's very few U.S. universities that have those. And that's one thing I've always really admired about European business schools, is they actually move a lot faster than U.S. universities. Are very grounded and old school, and European business schools are usually like really, they adopt things rather quickly. They're very innovative. So I think that's cool that in such a short time you're able to do all those things.
I'm curious to hear what's your feeling on that, BJ, and Bert, you can dive in on that. Why do you feel that it's so different? Why are we so stuck in our institutional ways?
I mean, the way that universities are viewed in the US is just different than the way, like in Europe, university and business work a lot closer together. The data sharing happens a lot more. In US, like the institution that is a university is seen as very separate from like the real world. And
Yeah.
not that we don't try and adjust and talk to them, but the collaboration's just not that close. And so we're just slower. We're just slower to adopt things because we're just not as cool as Bert and Paris, really.
What are your thoughts on that, Bert, as far
Well,
as like
if I
what
can say
that difference?
well, if I can share like the perception, we think that you're much faster than we are. So maybe it's like kind of internal organization that we
Yeah.
think like, oh, there they really move fast and they act on what is happening in society and the demand of the market.
I think that perception, and we're getting really philosophical here, but that perception I think is true in the business world. I think the business world in the US is a lot faster to move. But I
Yeah.
think universities, it's just the opposite. I think US universities are a lot slower to innovate compared to European business schools.
Maybe again, don't want to go too far on that, but this perception that sales was in our previous conversation, Bert, was like most students saw it as this selling to door to door or selling to consumers. You mentioned when you came into the program and was helping to develop the program, going back to this, go fast mode, you guys wanted to help students see the difference in what sales was as perceived versus what reality is. Do you mind talking to that a little bit on because again, some listeners here, some of the professors may not necessarily quite get like why they're going so deep on this. Like there's still perceptions of the way sales is viewed in Europe that probably wasn't not to where it is right now. Just take a second and explain that.
Yeah, so if I ask my students, let's say during the introduction of a course, I ask them how they look at sales and just the word sales, what comes up, if they see it as something positive, something negative. The thing is, let's say it's kind of in the middle towards slightly negative. And I think maybe we have a hard time shaking off the image of the vacuum salesperson door to door. What does help is to rename it, is to call it more, yeah, really like rebrand it and call it business development, account management, something with a twitch on negotiation, add the word international in there. And they're a bit more open to it. The thing is also business schools are not for free, not in Europe and not in the US. So it is also that investment that needs to have a positive ROI. If they invest a lot of money, so a lot of our programs are 5 years. If they invest 5 years of business school for the business school and have to live in Paris, it's a serious amount of money. And then afterwards only work in, let's say, an electronics store to explain kind of the features of a tablet. It's a yeah, it doesn't it's not what they've been looking for. So, and those people in the electronics store have the same kind of name tag or like label or like how you call it, like a title.
Sales. Yeah.
Yeah. So you kind of have to differentiate from that. Nothing wrong with working in an electronics store, but it's completely different when you closing deals to wire skyscrapers in the business district, which is a completely different approach. It's not just a touch and feel. It's really understanding the complete value of wiring such a skyscraper or heating system and so on. And a
So I
skyscraper.
like what you mentioned. I like what you mentioned, Bert, about helping them then see the difference by, the vernacular that we use. Is the language different? How we label it's different. Can you talk about other ways that you do that besides just telling them, like guest speaker, like sales competitions, like give an examples, like how do you go about changing that student perception?
Yeah. So one thing I would add, I would try to make a clear difference between consumer sales and B2B sales. And then when I have guest speakers, it's people from like really good companies. And as you mentioned, we organize a sales competition. We have always about 20 executives per campus acting as jury members. And that really makes them realize, wow, this is really cool. They really see sales directors acting as a buyer or as a jury member. They talk to them. They realize this is not kind of a low entry position. This is really where I would like to be. I would like to be that person. And if you see that in their eyes, then they really have understood that sales is a really a cool profession, and it can give you really like lots of like dopamine. It can really make you feel really alive in a very professional context. And so it's not just trying to sell something of 17 euros or 20 like $15 I don't know, $20. So that really makes them really realize, okay, this is really cool. This is really like a bit of everything. It's really understanding business, it's a bit of negotiation, it's relationship building. There you really make them realize this is so cool.
I think the prestigious part also, helps. And one of the things you shared with us was they saw their friends who go back to the notes. So we from our previous conversation, you mentioned that most students, when they leave out of university in business, they're going into sales, and we see similar behavior here. The students that went into business, especially tech sales, in Europe, they're like footballers now, making money and successful. And their friends in college, they're explaining to them. That was something that caught my attention when we first spoke, that the peers are
Mm.
helping to also shape that perception. Can you talk on that for a sec?
Yeah, definitely. So here in Paris, there's like a lot of money flowing into tech and definitely startups, like the same like as you have in the US. But a lot of that money that has been raised or that these companies attract doesn't always go to development of, let's say, software. Definitely a part of it, but most of let's say Series A and later on flows into recruiting salespeople. So they have substantial money to hire sales talent. And then these people also have a cool product to sell, come successful, have a really cool environment. And so it's not like always like these boring industrial products that are more difficult to relate to as a young person. Although I like the very industrial products, I like those. But for these young graduates, it's really cool to see, okay, like this really has this impact. There's a clear value case, and they have a really cool life. And so they're well paid, they have a cool car, they can travel. Like a lot, it checks a lot of boxes for what these young people are looking for in their first, let's say, not only job, but first jobs. And that inspires them, yeah.
One other thought I want to go into before we jump into the next piece was really going into the next component is the transition. We now established what you guys, why you're doing this. Can you just give us a second, help us understand what your program looks like now, your sales program, the master's program that you guys have? What is that? Some of the professors here are probably just curious about what that look like compared to theirs.
So it's actually a set of different classes. So going from sales management to personal selling, having negotiation techniques is really quite broad, and it really prepares them for like every aspect of the sales profession. So from selling techniques to understanding how it fits in a larger organization, and develop them as part of a member of a successful sales organization.
Love it. BJ, one of the things that you and I connected with in preparation to this with Bert was around the what the consumers want. And I know Bert's really big into that. What are some of your thoughts, questions on that side as far as what the customers are thinking?
Yeah, we did an episode a little while ago, and we talked about how in business school we focus so much on things from the salesperson's perspective, right? We talk about the sales process from the salesperson's perspective, prospecting, discovery, etc., demo, right? That's not how like a customer thinks about their buying process. So one of the things, Bert, that we were really excited to talk to you about is the customer's journey, right? The customer's needs, the making sure the voice of the customer is center into business education. So this is a great time to pitch your book as well, to Adam. But talk about the content of your book, and then talk about how we can better integrate that into a sales education at the university level.
hmm Well, I think it always starts with understanding customer centricity, that we understand we're dealing with a relationship. So to make a link, so my PhD was titled "Salespeople are from Mars, purchasers are from Venus."
I love that.
And the idea is really this is a relationship, and it's very similar to the book that we all know, and not my PhD, of course. But the idea of that book is that sales teams are different, or like I say, men are different than women, and it's the same. Sales teams are different than buyers or purchasers, and it's kind of there. We have differences. So they think different. So let's say, as you mentioned, the buying process is different from the selling process. And there's many differences among them, but ultimately they share the same objective. They want a lasting relationship. That's something that many salespeople might not believe, but it is true, except for some product categories where it's really about negotiating every 6 months and really reducing that price as much as possible, because there's many suppliers and it's just kind of that commodity market. But most of the businesses, they want their suppliers and the sales teams to stay. They want to build those relationships because it also takes a lot of effort for them to find them, to nurture them, to really build that relationship. So very similar to relationships or marriage. My wife is listening, so I have to. No,
You have to be careful before you get in trouble.
Exactly. And so, and that goes against like the ABC. So always be closing. So here I would say always be customer centric. But there's some nuances to it. So a lot of companies, they say we are customer centric. We do everything for a customer, and that sets actually really the wrong expectations. So again, like in a normal relationship, they're not always looking for the best of the best. So it could be just a good enough product that they're seeking, and has kind of, that's kind of what they're looking for, not always like kind of the Rolls Royce of a certain product. So that for me, that's definitely an important start. And the book is really about understanding how they think, how they are organized, how they deal with their time, with their efficiency, and how they really set priorities. And if you understand that, as really then it's easy. And then you can really align, let's say, your sales approach, your sales team, how you reach out to them, how many meetings you want or no meetings. All of that flows based on how you, like, if you really put on their goggles, if you really step in their shoes, you see, well, actually, yes, of course, then we shouldn't be doing all of this, and we should maybe try this approach for this particular segment.
One thing Donald always says is, we don't, in sales, we don't use the golden rule, do unto others as you want done unto you. We use the platinum rule, which is do to the customer what they want done. Talking about, I'm sure I slaughtered that, Donald, but from the buyer's perspective. So talk now about how you integrate that into your sales curriculum. How do you help students learn about sales first from their perspective, and then say, all right, now we're going to do a total 180 and say, now you got to view it from the buyer's perspective?
Well, I give them a purchasing strategy class as well. So they need to understand how purchasers think, how they are organized. There's many things that sales teams have never heard of. And if you check with any purchaser, it's kind of their baseline. So it's the purchaser or the buyer who decides if we have a deal or not the other way around. It's not because we have great processes, sales processes, that the buyer will buy. You really have to adapt and adjust to their needs. So that's definitely like a rule. So these students really get purchasing classes. So they understand what the Kralvik matrix is about. They understand how they assess value. And then if you link that to, let's say, to a negotiation class afterwards, then they realize, oh, okay, if you can make the business case based on, let's say, company level and then also on their personal level, linked to decision-making unit, like how they actually have to move that process forward, then negotiations become much easier.
I think we should title this episode, Donald. Sellers are from Mars and buyers are from not Mars.
Not from Mercury. Can't do exactly Venus.
Yeah.
With that being said, one of the things you mentioned is like, and I've seen this before, the purchasers have focused on purchasing efficiencies, right? And they want to, they don't want to, I think they don't want to meet with you if they don't have to. And I think that piece is one that we get mixed up as sales professionals, where go back to what you and BJ was just mentioning, was my process is I need to have a demo or I need to have the disc go at this level and so forth. But the purchaser is like, bro, I don't need all of that. And there should be some level of discovery, but they don't need to have the rigmarole. They have their efficiencies. How can what can you talk about that? Like, what is the efficiencies they're trying to accomplish that we should be cognizant of as we're working with purchasers?
Today we have ChatGPT or other AI tools, so you
Yeah.
can always ask these things. So if you ask how many suppliers, so that means sales teams, are a client of mine or prospect of mine more or less managing, you'll be stunned. I mean, companies. So for example, Procter & Gamble, they manage 75,000 suppliers. So the kind of, how call it, to give like an indication, per billion dollar in turnover, they manage 3,000 suppliers on average.
One person.
Well, that's the team. So
Yeah,
but the
team.
team is not like they never have hundreds of purchasers. So in the book, I even made a calculation. So if you have, how many did I count? Like if you have a few hundred suppliers that you have to manage, and you meet with them once a month for 1 hour, but like your team size rapidly needs to become like 65. So you have to prioritize. It's not like I would like to be efficient. They have to be efficient. So they have to. And how they decide that is really based on the business continuity risk for their firm. If you buy something that from, let's say, from a company, and if you don't have it, how bad will it be for your company? And that depends, like how many suppliers are in the markets and how business critical is it. So if that goes up, they really will approach you differently. They will negotiate less, maybe on the facade, on the first, like how call it, at the front, they might still negotiate a little bit, but they will probably not do it. So these are kind of bottleneck and strategic products or services. And so that's really critical for them. But then all the rest, when it's not like that business critical, or there are many suppliers available in the market, they will approach it completely different. So then they will go through tenders, they will like have reversed auctions and all of that. It's not to make your life miserable, but it's more to create also
that's what it feels like.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure procurement exists just to torment salespeople.
Yeah, we're from salespeople are from Mars. Procurement is from Mercury.
But you know why they're also sometimes more difficult to sales teams? Is
What is that?
because salespeople always try to bypass purchasers. They try to ignore them, go around them, and everything. So put yourself in purchaser's pair of shoes. You've been ignored, and then suddenly you come to hear like, hey, they're really advanced with my colleagues, like not in purchasing, but like in another team in operations. And they said like, hey, you tried to like skip me, like you didn't recognize that I'm important. So I think sometimes it becomes also a personal thing to show their value to their company, and they have power. So that's something that most salespeople realize the hard way. They have power. So they're not just there to negotiate 2-3%, but if they want, they really can go really hard. And also you didn't invite them in early meetings, so they didn't get your value propositions. So what is left is pure price negotiations, and they're terribly good at it. Like,
Bert,
Oh yeah,
why are you taking the side of procurement here?
I
This
know. Yeah,
the
Bert.
enemy, Bert. Don't. I'm just kidding. I'm
He's a
kidding.
he's
I
a
I
he's
actually
a
think
two-way spy.
yes, yes. Bert, I think what a beautiful perspective to have in thinking about, how to see things from the viewpoint of the buyer and the buying team. And when we talk about multi-threading, and we're not just talking about the people and the users, right? We're talking about everyone in the company who's going to be a decision maker. So as early on as possible as we can involve procurement,
mm,
as we can make them feel part of the deal, and
yep,
we're not trying to bypass them, like, the better, right? I mean, they're part of the buying team. They need to have
yes,
a value proposition. They need to fill the relationship. That's all important.
exactly. So think about a B2B SaaS company. It's similar to trying to avoid the IT department. They need to have their buy-in. Like if you
Yeah.
try to ignore them, they will say like, "Hey, what is this?" Like, so if you proactively invite them and say like, "Here is our like, I don't know, security measures and all of that, and whole trust building part for
Mhm.
sharing, let's say like their core ERP or CRM with, let's say like that B2B SaaS." Things go much smoother. But if they realize, hey, you try to like already connect something in our in our heart of our system, well, they will give you a lot of pain. It's actually
Yes.
like a human reaction. Yeah.
Yeah,
You
IT procurement, they can always find a reason to kill the deal. IT can always say, "Oh no, that integration's not going to work." That they can find a way around it if they wanted to. But if they don't like you,
Hmm.
then they will find a reason to kill the deal.
I love it. I've
Yeah.
learned it. I've learned it the hard way. I smile by all of this. I've done everything there. Try to go around IT, and I have tried to skirt procurement, and you just learn. When you can, one of the best deals I worked on was with Rick. He was purchasing, and Rick, it was perfect. Like, and I think sometimes too, the organization has to have a need, right? In order for you to really can really effectively make a change. I wanted to help make something happen a year before. They weren't ready, but they came to a point where they were ready. And Rick was getting ready to retire. Rick wanted to make a change in the district. It was a school district. And he became the champion of champions. And he got the right people involved. He got the right economical buyers because he knew everything that I needed to do. It wasn't his first time purchasing, man. He's been there for like 20, 30 years, right? He's retiring. But following their perspective rather than trying to push my agenda made it very easy to be able to close that deal. So it was awesome. Bert, if there's one major takeaway, I mean, there's so much we can go deep on, but if there's one major takeaway you would like professors who are listening to this episode to walk away with, whether it's around the perspective of sales in the EU or around the purchaser standpoint, what's that one major insight you want them to leave this episode with?
Oh, for sales professors, I would really understand how purchasers think. I would really see it not as like one-sided view, like let's say how to sell, but really how to develop buyer-seller relationships.
Love it. Well, I like that, and I think it makes total sense. BJ, any closing remarks, thoughts?
Bert, thanks so much for coming on. What a cool perspective. I mean, it's been you've given a much different perspective than a lot of episodes we talked about, both from a European business perspective, but also from the procurement's perspective.
We can cut that out.
So thanks so much for coming on. We appreciate you.
Thanks, Bert.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a true pleasure.
All right, so I think Bert set the stage proper and gave us, how to enunciate his name and pronounce it better. But we have it in the show notes now, so you can see it. But Bert, thank you so much for joining us today. BJ, the first half was really cool, and I loved the establishment of sales and didn't think about that from what you guys were discussing as far as why it's so much more easier there. I think maybe because it's like Bert said, it's catching up to the US that they're willing to I want to say, not have so much red tape, to be able to, let's develop a master's program. Let's develop this stuff. The U.S. is doing a really good job at it. And maybe we're just established. But I thought that was interesting. And the other part was, I've always, like you said, the and your definition of platinum was really great too. So it's good. I think we need to adjust it. But I think the piece that I loved the most was on the second half was not to think that we supersede the purchasing. Like, we really need to work with those departments and come from their perspective. Like the Procter and Gamble one, I knew there were like, tons of brands, but I didn't think that many, 75,000 brands. So I'm like, man. So I have to think of it differently. So those are some really good things that I thought, and I think professors can use that in their programs. What about you, man?
Yeah, I mean, everyone should go buy his book. If you're in sales or in sales education, I mean, being able to, he has a lot of really cool research and stats in there, that really help us understand what it is like to be a buyer, to be on the buying team, to be procurement, to think about sales from the buyer's perspective. And I know as salespeople, we try and do that. And a lot of us have been buyers as well as sellers. But when you're in sales in a very long time, you just start to see everything from your perspective, and being able to think about what the buyer's journey is looking like, what they want to see from the salesperson. And I love what he mentioned about relationships. The buyer wants relationships almost as bad as the seller wants relationship. Think about from the Procter & Gamble perspective, they would rather not add one more vendor. They would rather not add one more person that they need to buy from, instead of when they can just buy the product from you. So
Yeah.
they want to like you. They want to have a relationship with you. And so making it easy to work with you, answering emails quickly, being able to do things from their process, asking them, how do you want this to go? How can I make this easier on the procurement team? I mean, Imagine a seller going to procurement and saying, hey, you tell us, like, how can we make this as easy as possible on you? You're already going to be like the top 5% of the favorite people.
I'm going to reply back to you faster and get your stuff through.
Totally.
I love it. I did what BJ said about his book. Check it out. You can find a link down in the show notes. Listen, we want you to be successful as you're helping the next generation of sellers. If there's a topic or insight that you want us to tackle that we haven't done on this episode, please go ahead and let us know. If you haven't subscribed to this podcast, please do so. And if you know someone else that's teaching sales and want to get great insights, send them here. But as always, we want you to
sell. Good luck selling.
Sell and do it good. Good luck at it. See you guys on the next one.
Bye.